Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking the incredibly suspenseful and deeply emotional journey of Daniel Carter and Samuel Reed. This is the story of two soldiers who made a single, seemingly impossible choice that changed absolutely everything. We're going to dive right into the mechanics of their courage and the staggering sacrifices they made on a treacherous mountain path.
So, let's dive right in with a pretty tough question. Would you defy direct military orders if it was literally the only way to save innocent lives? It's not just some abstract philosophical debate. This is the exact high-stakes reality Daniel Carter was facing. Instead of following his commanded military objectives, he made the monumental decision to completely abandon his mission. And why? Because there were frightened civilians hiding beneath a ruined farmhouse who desperately needed protection.
That brings us to Section 1, the choice to stay.
Now, as you can probably imagine, in the middle of a war zone, a massive decision like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. In the immediate fallout, we see a really stark contrast between these two soldiers. Samuel harbored a very realistic, practical fear of extreme military punishment for abandoning the mission. I mean, who wouldn't? But Daniel's moral compass was just completely unwavering. He shuts down the argument by pointing out a grim reality. If they leave, there won't be anyone left to save. The soldiers silently agree, setting the stage for the tremendous sacrifices they're about to make.
By the very next morning, the soldiers are already dividing up their incredibly scarce food among the hiding families, basically leaving nothing for themselves. When a young widow named Anna, who's been fiercely protecting her 7-year-old daughter Sophia, asks why they're helping them, Daniel delivers this powerful philosophy. He says, saving one life is never the wrong choice. It completely anchors the epic action to come and tells us exactly who this guy is before the real test even begins.
Moving right along to Section 2. The hidden mountain path.
Obviously, their shelter couldn't remain hidden forever. Enemy patrols were moving closer, so trusting a 10-year-old local boy named Lucas, who actually knew of a forgotten path, they begin this grueling escape. First, they creep out under the cover of evening darkness. Then, they endure hours of exhausting navigation through a totally fog-filled night forest. Literally every broken branch, every distant engine sound is a massive threat. Finally, this grueling march leads them right to a terrifying obstacle, a deep valley spanned by a dangerously degraded wooden bridge.
Which leads us to Section 3, Rescue at the Bridge.
Okay, the tension here is just off the charts. They're stuck at this narrow, partially collapsed wooden structure. Turning back meant certain capture, right? So one by one, they take it agonizingly slow to minimize weight, but halfway across, disaster strikes. A loud crack echoes through the valley, a rope snaps, and young Sophia slips. Totally ignoring Samuel's shouts, Daniel just sprints directly onto the collapsing wood to save her.
Just imagine the sheer cinematic scale of this moment. Daniel reaches Sophia right as another plank breaks beneath him. He grabs her with one arm, desperately clinging to the remaining rope with the other. They are literally hanging over a rocky river for several terrifying seconds before the other soldiers manage to rush forward and pull them both to safety, mere moments before the bridge completely disintegrates into the valley below.
If Daniel had hesitated for even a single second, Sophia would have been lost for sure. Through her tears, Anna hugs her daughter and whispers, "You saved my whole world." And this really grounds all that intense action in deep emotional reality. It reminds us of the very real human stakes involved in Daniel's initial choice to stay.
But get this, astonishingly, they weren't alone. An enemy officer had actually witnessed this incredibly selfless, dangerous rescue play out, and instead of using that moment of extreme vulnerability to attack, his stern expression changes to reluctant respect. He silently orders his soldiers to lower their weapons, just letting the group escape. It's this profound, almost unbelievable moment of shared humanity right in the middle of a brutal conflict.
Let's look at Section 4, the ultimate sacrifice. Now, escaping the bridge definitely didn't mean escaping the danger. With food almost entirely gone and water even scarcer, the physical toll on these guys became immense. One evening, a starving Samuel quietly offers Daniel his very last piece of bread, insisting Daniel needs it more. But Daniel refuses to take it just for himself. He breaks it in half, simply stating, "We survived together." It's a really profound gesture of brotherhood, and a moment so impactful that young Lucas watched it silently, remembering it forever. But well, the quiet simply doesn't last. Late that night, strange lights start piercing the trees. Enemy search patrols have finally closed in, forcing the soldiers to hurriedly stash the civilians inside a dark cave. Daniel listens out into the darkness, counting the footsteps. There are simply too many of them.
If that patrol reaches the cave, the whole group is going to be captured.
So, Daniel makes a sudden, unthinkable decision to act as human bait. Telling Samuel that they don't get to choose when courage is needed, Daniel steps right out into the open, and the danger escalates instantly. He deliberately makes noise, flashlights whip toward him, and dozens of soldiers immediately give chase. Gunfire is echoing across the mountains as he sprints blindly through the pouring rain, branches just tearing at his uniform, drawing the entire patrol as far away from the innocent families as possible.
And that brings us to Section 5, A Secret in the Dark.
Fleeing deeper into the forest than he ever had before, completely exhausting every ounce of his energy, Daniel finally locates an abandoned railway tunnel. He slips inside and has to literally hold his breath as an enemy soldier walks just feet away from his hiding spot. Luckily, the sound of the pouring rain covers his breathing. Eventually, the patrol moves on, but as Daniel steps deeper into the pitch-black tunnel to finally catch his breath, he makes a totally chilling discovery. He shines his flashlight down and spots fresh footprints in the dirt, but they aren't military boots. They are bare feet.
Someone else is living inside this abandoned railway tunnel in the middle of a literal war zone. Shining his flashlight further into the darkness, the beam reveals a pair of frightened eyes staring right back at him. And that brings us to a final, really provocative question. Who is hiding in the dark, and how will they change Daniel's life forever? It's an absolute cliffhanger that leaves this thrilling story of survival, morality, and courage hanging in total suspense. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to reflect on the immense weight of the choices these incredible soldiers made.